4. Okay. So we have some pretty high numbers as well, some low, but hopefully everybody will find some value in what our guest speaker will have to say. So thank you for the check-in. As you probably heard, the first part of this presentation will be recorded, but the breakout rooms will not be recorded. So to just go over the agenda, we have a guest speaker, Anders Thoresson from AI Sweden, who will present about 20-25 minutes. Then we'll have a small Q&A with him here in the main room, after which we will enter the breakout rooms, talk a bit about what we heard, about some personal insights that we might have. A big room retro. Everybody comes here and just share what has been spoken about, and we will have a hard stop at 2 o'clock. As said, I encourage you to stay for the discussions in the breakout rooms. It is always insightful to hear everyone's thoughts on a certain topic. So let's get to the main speaker of the day, Anders Thoresson. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Anders, he's a change agent within AI Sweden, which is Sweden's national center for applied AI. In that role, he's supporting particularly small and medium businesses in how artificial intelligence can create value in an organization. At AI Sweden, he wears another hat. He's a team of the communication team. He's a member of the communication team, sorry. And I have to let you know, he has an amazing podcast, which I recommend you to check out, called Digital Samtal. It's in Swedish, but it's if you speak Swedish, it's worth to check it out. He and his guests talk about technology development from a societal perspective. So with that being said, welcome, Anders, again, and the stage is yours.
Thank you, Levi. And I'm going to share my screen and get this started. So I'm going to talk about how to implement AI in an organization, be it in the public sector or the private sector. But I'm going to do this from the perspective of an AI maturity assessment. That is a tool that we at AI Sweden have translated into Swedish. It's originally developed by a German sister organization of AI Sweden that's called Applied AI. And that is a tool that could help an organization of any size to measure how AI mature are we really, and compare that to others. And using that tool as the foundation for what we are going to talk about here today, one can also find ways to come at the implementation phase of AI, how to actually put AI to use in an organization, which is what we are interested in at AI Sweden. Because yes, as you recently heard, we are Sweden's national center for applied artificial intelligence. And that means that we have a mission to accelerate the use of AI for the benefit of our society, our competitiveness, and for everyone living in Sweden. And we do this as a non-profit organization broadly funded by Vinnova, the Swedish innovation agency, and also from our just a bit over 100 partner organizations that comes from both the private and public sector, and also from academia. And what is important to understand here is that we are not working with the development of AI. At least not, we didn't used to when we started 3.5 years ago. Recently, we have started to do some R&D work as well, specifically inside the work of large language models, where we see that AI Sweden is well suited to take an active role in that work, because that's something that's very resource intensive, both in compute power and in training material, and AI Sweden is well suited to do that. So we have recruited a team of really skilled NLP experts that working on this. But otherwise, except for that, we are mainly here to support how to make AI a valuable tool in Swedish organizations. Not how should they work with developing AI, but how should they work with using AI to create value or benefits within the organization. When we talk about AI maturity, and with we, I mean AI Sweden, but also Applied AI, this is what we mean. This is a 5-step staircase where you get more and more mature the higher up the stair you climb. And you start as a non-started organization that hasn't done any work at all with AI. But once you do, you take the step up to the next step, which is the experimenter phase, where you have started to understand and think about how AI can be valuable to your organizations. You are starting to build the first prototypes, the first proof of concepts, but you as an organization often get stuck on that level. It's the next step is quite hard to take. And that is when you become a practitioner, where you have established a vision within the organization-wide, for why should we bother with AI at all. And you are also start to work more systemic with AI, not just a proof of concept here, a pilot there, but actually have taken a central process and strategy for how to work with AI in the best way. Once you start to actually put AI in production and throughout the organizations, you are becoming a professional. And finally, when AI is really a part of everything you do, you become what Applied AI and AI Sweden calls a shaper. But what's worth noting here is that very few are on these later steps, and actually quite few are beyond step 3. A majority of all organizations in private and public sectors are still to be called as non-starters. And when you answer that your maturity levels within the organizations you work with in the chat just recently, there were a lot of high numbers that I actually would like to question a bit, whether these organizations really are as mature as you think they are. And the reason that it is hard to become an AI mature organization is that AI maturity is about much more than just data and technology. When you start to think about AI, you often start with the technology itself or the data. And then it's easy to conclude that to be mature when it comes to making use of AI, you have to be technical, advanced, and have a lot of data, and that's it. But from a lot of work that we do with our partners and a lot of work that Applied AI does with its German partners and work's been done throughout the whole world, it is quite obvious that data and the technology is just a part of being an AI mature organization. And because of that, data and technology is also a small part of what you need to really start to implement AI in a way that provides value to the organization and the customers. And when we measure AI maturity with the AI maturity assessment tool, we do that from 9 different dimensions. And you have to be mature in all of these 9 dimensions to really be an AI mature organization. And these dimensions are steering, its ambition, its use cases, where should we really put AI to use. Then we have a set of 6 enablers. These are data and technology that we have already spent some time on, but it's also how do you organize your organization. to what extent and how do you participate in a local or regional or national or even international ecosystem for AI? What expertise do you have inside the organization, but also within the other companies or suppliers that you work with? What does your culture look like, your company culture? Are you open to experimentation and trying out new things, or is the culture more of business as usual and just keep things as they are? And finally, you have to have the capability to execute on everything else. So execution is also an important dimension to measure this in. So when you do an AI maturity assessment, people in the organization, people in the organization answer a survey which consists of a number of things that you have to agree on or disagree on, or something in between. And depending on the size of the organization, there are up to 100 statements divided into these 9 dimensions that you have to answer to decide if you disagree or agree with. And when you have done that, the tool analyzes the results, and you get the maturity level for each of these 9 dimensions, which is the organization average for each dimension. And since this is a tool that's used by many organizations in Sweden and in Germany and other places, you also have the opportunity to compare your organization to other similar organizations. In what areas are you a laggard behind your competitors or comparable organizations? And in what dimensions are you running in the forefront? But what's also very interesting is that you can break the results down in your own organization and find differences between different departments or different competences, or between the leadership and other parts of the organization, and find tension points within the organizations, where sometimes perhaps the leadership, the board level and C-level people thinks that they have a good steering on the AI work, or that there is really a good ideas about how should AI be applied within the organizations. But if you move down through the different levels in the organization, you can often find that people further down are not looking at things the same way as the leadership does. And this helps to bring these tensions point up for discussion, and also can be used as a decision maker to decide where should we focus to really get to this point where we can start to implement AI the way that we want to do. And thanks to this, that the maturity assessment tool is divided in these 9 dimensions. It's not only a tool that can help an organizations to assess how mature are we here now, but it's also a tool that can be used to make these decisions on what do we need to work on next. And once again, I want to stress that very few of these nine dimensions are technical per se. And the reasons for that is that when you look at what the barriers are, in different kinds of surveys done, as many as 98% of the respondees claims that their organizations want to be data-driven, but only 1/3 say that they have actually achieved that goal, that they are in some sense data-driven here now. And what's often missing and referred to is not data or technology as the barriers to become these data-driven organization. It's much more often that it's cultural challenges or internal processes that are the hurdles that stops AI from being put in use. Only 19%, 1 in 5, says that technology is the biggest and most important barrier in their AI journey. So when you are starting to talk about AI implementation, looking at the technology side is not always the right place to start. You have to start to think about other areas that are more important if you really want to start working with AI. And the reason for that is that we still treat AI as an experimental, cool IT project where we take our data, we take the AI models, the technology, and combine them into a proof of concept where we tries out the technology and make sure that the technology can be used in the way that we envision it can be. But the problem with this is that a proof of concept is not necessarily a proof of value. If you start using technology from the perspective of technology itself, it's quite easy to be blinded by the features and possibilities that AI provides. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what you can do with AI is also where AI is best put in use. So instead of looking at data and AI and what can we do with that, it's a much better way to start with processes or problems or the product, and then add AI as a layer to that in the areas where it makes sense, and not build a proof of concept, but instead build a proof of value. And if you start addressing and coming at your AI projects and pilots from a value proposition instead, you start with the needs within the organization. What internal processes are bottlenecks today? What are our customers complaining about? In what areas do we often have a lot of returns from our customers, etc.? And then start to look at these pain points in the organization and start to think about, okay, is this an area where AI could be useful and helpful for us to solve an existing problem? Not starting with the technology and trying to find an area where that technology could be used, rather the other way around. Now, to do this, you don't have to understand the nitty-gritty on how AI works. To find possible proof of values, what you need is a broad understanding of the capabilities that AI brings to the table, what new tools are in our toolbox nowadays, thanks to AI. And when you have this basic understanding on what AI can do and help us with, you can have that as a backdrop when you are looking at your organization and looking at the pain points that are present in the organization. And at AI Sweden, we group these eight main capabilities of AI in 4 different groups, where we have the Sense the World group, which is computer vision, the development of AI that can listen to audio, and finally the everything that's happening in the natural language processing space with linguistics and working with human speech and human text in both understanding and that. Then we have Control the World, which is an old development, so to speak, where robotics has been a part of the industrial revolution for many decades now. But it's quickly becoming supercharged with the use of AI, in that it becomes more easy, for instance, to let humans and machines interact more closely and do things that wasn't possible before, thanks to the opportunity to really control what's happening in the physical world in new ways. Then perhaps what's most often taught about as part of AI, or at least the the sister term of big data, is the abilities to discover, to forecast, and to optimize based on data analysis. And then finally, we have an area which is create the world, and how AI can support in creation of both art or images and video and human text and human speech, but also help in creating, for instance, physical designers who are working in computer-aided design, in developing new ways to build airplanes or cars, where AI can help to come up with designs that the human mind couldn't envision at all. And in that saving a lot of material, a lot of weight, and by that a lot of fuel consumption and CO2 emissions, for instance. But once you have all these AI capabilities in place and an understanding for them, you can also start to work with these different dimensions of AI maturity and address them one by one. And we're going to have another look at these dimensions organized in a little different way compared to the results from the AI maturity assessment tool. This is what we call the AI house, which starts with as the roof for everything that you do is the mission and objectives. This is in the maturity assessment tool itself what's called the steering dimension. Where do you want to use AI, and what are the vision and mission for how we should apply it? Based on that, you have the ambition on how good you want to be at using AI, and what are the high-level effect goals that you are looking to create with the use of AI. And then, this is where implementation really happens, so to speak, are the use cases. And for that, we can offer processes for ideation and of AI use cases, and how to evaluate different use cases against each other. Where it's one thing to find a possible use of AI, but another thing is to decide which of a portfolio of AI use cases are the safest or smartest bets here and now. And that is a decision that's made both of technical feasibility, how easy is it to do this, to build this use case, but also how valuable would it be to create this. And for that, we have a canvas where we can benchmark different use cases against each others and find out what are the best ones that create a measurable value going forward. And by doing this process, but by both the ideation to find any and all possible AI use cases, you build an portfolio that, with the help of the prioritization, also put them in a queue, so to speak, where you start with the most valuable ones, or the simplest ones, just to get your fingers into AI, and then start to build from there. But also then you have all the enablers, the capabilities that are needed to realize what you want to do with AI. And these are, once again, technology and data, of course, but also, and I can't stress this enough, the other forces, the organization, the ecosystem, the expertise, the know-how on AI, and the internal culture, if that is allowing for experimentation, or but also whether different parts of the organizations are working in silos or are talking with each other. And this is most often a problem in larger organizations, where different parts of the organization might work on similar projects, but not knowing that others are trying to solve computer vision challenge, or something related to natural language processing. And that is a problem that can be avoided if you get the central processes and strategies in place, making sure that you get to understand what's happening throughout the organization and make it possible to pool resources in a much more efficient way. And that's also about the execution, of course, to really build on all these enablers to create the use cases and the value that AI can provide once implemented in a good way. Just before I start to wrap up, a little bit about the role that I and Astrid, who is on the call as well, and two colleagues of us, Marcus and Eric, are having inside AI Sweden is the AI change agent role. And we are seeing that this is a role that's really important within organizations. We sometimes think about ourselves as translators between different parts of the organizations, making it possible for the ones who are more on the technical side to really understand what are the business needs that our organization have, or what are the purpose of the organization at all. And on the other hand, understanding and what are the needs of the organization, and then translating that into possible technical solutions. So many organizations would benefit greatly from having this change agent role in place that can be a mediator between different departments speaking different internal languages, and really becoming a translator and a proxy between different organizations, and making sure that different expertise, different competences within the organizations have the opportunity to meet around the table, sit down and discuss what are the needs and what are the possible technical solutions, what regulations are a hurdle for this, how can we from leadership make sure that you get the right budget to work on this proof of value, etc. So the change agent is really the AI maker in some sense, that makes sure that AI is happening. And also very briefly about the role the hat that Astrid and I are wearing, which is the change agent vest hat. This is a project financed by the EU and Västra Götalandsregionen and Region Halland, where we until next summer 2023 are working together with small and medium-sized enterprises within Västra Götaland and Halland, supporting them not in how to develop AI, but supporting them into how they can use AI. And we do that with a toolbox with both the full-blown maturity assessment that we have been talking about here today, but also a more slimmed down version that's more suitable for non-starters. Then we do inspirational presentations. We can help them with the workshops, etc., in finding the right way, the first way to start implement AI. And also, if you are interested in reading more about not the least possible use cases of AI, AI Sweden recently launched a site called my.a.se, My AI, which is what we hope will become the central hub for the Swedish AI ecosystem, where everyone now can sign up for an account and share, among other things, good examples on how AI have been put in use in both private and public sector, small and larger companies. So that is a really, really good resource if you are interested in finding out how other organizations have used AI to create value within their organizations. And with that, Levi, is my presentation finished for now.
Thank you, Anders, for a great presentation. It's great to see that there is a tool that can be used to assess how mature a company is, but it's a bit shocking to see how many companies are still at a very, very early age in their AI journey. I have a lot of questions, but I will leave the space to others to ask questions. So maybe we can take one or two before we jump to breakout rooms. So if anybody wants to Just unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. No questions, then maybe we can jump to breakout rooms. Yeah, I guess we'll do that. So we would, per tradition, we would like to invite you to share ideas, insights, and also network. My colleagues will put you into breakout rooms for 15 minutes. There won't be any screen recording during the breakout sessions. You will have 1 or 2 facilitators in each room moderating the conversation. And if you have a possibility, feel free to turn on your microphones and cameras. And with that said, we will pull you back at 13 and 50 and just share a bit about what has been discussed. So thank you. And yes, and Anders will be jumping around in breakout rooms also, listening in and contributing to the conversation. So enjoy.
Five seconds.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. We hope you had some interesting discussions, new connections, and maybe even new insights. And we would like to hear some voices. I would also like to hear maybe what insights you got. So feel free to unmute and just share anything you want to share. Not all at once, please.
I guess I start. In our group, we kind of had this discussion about the need of AI change agents, and we kind of agreed that there is a need if there is a will from the companies, let's say, to change and they see the value in it, and from there, AI change agent could actually come in and help them navigate this space, understand it a bit more, and also figure out the next steps. How do you start, and where do you start, and what can you do with data? Found that quite interesting.
Thank you for sharing, Adrian.
Yes, for me, I'm interested in organizational structure and how can we make it more adaptable to AI agent, even regarding some sort of small training. There is no need for having another employee regarding AI agent, but how we can make training for in-house person to play this role. Understanding the organizational structure is key part for the change, in my opinion. Thank you.
I think that's a really crucial question that you're asking. That I mean, there is one of the topics that we discuss in AI Sweden and with our partner organizations over and over again is a shortage of AI talent, both within specific organizations, within Sweden as a country, and globally as well. And you can't always count on being able to recruit the talent that you need. So one way to get this in place, this change agent role, is to start looking internally, finding persons that are already, or can, with a little bit of training, get these fundamental understanding for both the technical aspects and the business side and the organization side, and become this spider in the center of the AI web that can help different part of the organizations to talk to each others. But I think that find that person internally would often be a good idea, and start to look for that person close to the core business rather than close to the technical side. I think is a good bet as well, because what you really need to find the proper use cases for AI is fundamental understanding for the organization and the business proposition and the value proposition of the organization. So you always have to have internal competence working in these projects. You can never think that you can fully outsource this to an AI supplier in some sense that will solve this issue on your behalf, because they will never understand the business good enough.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Levi. Well, one thing that I was thinking of when we discussed in the group that kind of corresponds to what Walid and Anders mentioned now, and that is, how do we differentiate between the AI change agents that and like the next level, because you still have ML engineers on the top of the scale, and if the AI change agents focuses on making a maturity assessment within the 3-part step, trying to see what maturity level a company sits on for AI and data, that still leaves out a step for creating the proof of concept or proof of value, which I like. So I'm thinking to one way of actually enabling more hungry people to actually allow to get the AI change agent role would be to split up. So you have a 3-step process. You have AI change agent to make the assessment, to give it a score. And then you have AI business consultant / strategist who actually builds the prototype strategy and actually construct some kind of proof of value. That person he doesn't need to do the evaluation, and can focus on that part and maybe needs more insight, and then hand that over to the client, which then could move on to actually hiring an ML engineer or something like that. So I'm just thinking, how can you split that up to make sure that the qualified people that have the knowledge work on an area that is specific to their qualifications?
Alfred, help me out here if you have anything to add, but I think that you shouldn't look at the AI change agent at someone who solely does the AI maturity assessment. It's rather that the AI maturity assessment is a tool for the AI business consultant or whatever you want to call it. And the change agent or the business consultant or whatever title we want to put on the business card is throughout the whole process a really crucial role, because it's the person that will make sure that you don't lose the perspective that you need to have, which is the business value or the organizational value. And you can't ever think that, okay, now we have defined what we need and leave a project specification or over to the ML team and expect them to work on their side for 6 months or 12 months and then return with what the organization asks for. You have to establish an internal culture where different competences, the need owners and the technical persons and legal and others are working closely together all the time on a daily basis, where they are sharing desks with each other, making sure that they continuously communicate with each other, talking about the needs, the technical solutions, the technical hurdles, to move things forward.
Okay, and I really enjoy
Okay.
the clarification that you gave now, because what you mean essentially, I might have misunderstood that the AI change agent role is more, like you said, it's a centralized spider in the web.
Yeah.
Try to connect the dots and make sure that everything flows through, right?
Exactly.
Okay, it makes sense then. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more question from Gabriella, and then we wrap it up. Go.
Maybe we will have it on the side. Maybe I'll email you. But I wonder, what is the actual role of? Thank you first for the clarification, because I was a little confused about that too. What you just said, it was Alfred. But I wonder the actual strategy of the implementation of AI. Are there any steps to it, or what it includes, where it starts and where it ends? But maybe that's something that needs to be, that takes time to.
Yeah, I would say, should you start somewhere? You should start with understanding what are the pain points, the bottlenecks, the hurdles for us creating the value that we are supposed to create, and not starting from a technical perspective. And we in my room we discussed a lot about what is really AI. How do we define what AI is? And I think that's the wrong questions to try to answer, because it doesn't matter if you solve a problem with AI or in some other way. But what you will want to find is what are the problems we need to solve. And sometimes AI will build a tool to you to do that, and then you start building an AI solution. And if AI is not the right tool, then you need to use some other tool to achieve that goal that you are striving for.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the way how to conceptualize that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Anders. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We have kept our promise and fulfilled on the AI checklist series. If you missed some of them, you can view them on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. And feel free to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram or LinkedIn. We can connect and we can continue the conversation. And also feel free to connect to anyone here in the room. And before we head off, thanks to the AI Think Tank crew, thanks to all of the facilitators, and a big thank you to Anders and Astrid, who joined from AI Sweden today. It's been amazing to listen to your presentation.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And I want to go back to the first question. So the checkout question, we'll do the same thing right in the chat. So after this session, after Anders' presentation, on a scale of 1 to 10, how AI mature is your organization, really? So just whenever you're ready, just type in a chat and hit send. Let's see.
Some lower numbers now.
A bit lower numbers, yeah. Victor is pessimistic or realistic. Okay, thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully we'll see more of each other in autumn when we'll be back with new sessions. Thank you everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anders.
Thank you.
Have a great Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.